The restaurant floated high above Earth's skyline, built into the glass ring of Elysium orbital station. Stars shimmered through the transparent ceiling, and the blue curve of the planet glowed far below. Waiters in silver suits carried glowing trays between tables filled with wealthy executives, nobles, and off-world diplomats. Everyone spoke softly, but every word carried pride and power. At one of the center tables sat Lena Hale, dressed in a simple blue gown. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her water glass. Across from her sat Ronan Vale, her fiancé, tall, handsome, and smiling in that way that looked charming to others but always cut her deep. His laughter was louder than the music, his voice proud and his words sharp. Tonight was supposed to be a special night. Ronan had promised they would celebrate his promotion at the Orbital Trade Guild, the same corporation that had rejected Lena's designs more than once. She had worked for years on a new fusion stability core, a device that could power ships safer and cheaper than anything before. But no one listened to her because she was just a mechanic from the lower decks. Still, she came tonight hoping maybe Ronan would finally see her as an equal. "Lena," Ronan said, swirling his drink with a grin, "you really should try the starfruit wine. It's a bit above your usual taste." She smiled weakly. "It's lovely here." "You've worked hard for this, Ronan." "Yes," he said proudly. "I have. The guild finally noticed real talent." Then he smirked. "Of course it helps to have someone like you for repairs. You're handy with tools, after all." A few guests at the next table chuckled. Lena's heart sank, but she forced a small laugh. "Well, someone had to fix the ship you almost crashed last year." The laughter stopped for a second. Ronan's expression froze, then changed into a fake smile. "Ah, that's right. My brave little engineer saved the day," he said, his voice now carrying to nearby tables. "You know, folks, she actually thought her design could revolutionize guild technology." "Cute, isn't it?" The guests laughed again. A sting rose in Lena's chest. She looked around, all these people with expensive clothes and perfect manners, and felt smaller than ever. "Ronan, please," she whispered, but he kept going, enjoying the attention. She worked for months in her tiny garage, thinking she could do what entire research teams couldn't. You should have seen it. Wires everywhere, broken drones, sparks flying. "I had to tell her to stop before she burned herself." The laughter grew louder. Lena lowered her eyes. Her throat tightened. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to leave. But before she could move, a heavy silence fell over the room. The laughter faded. The music stopped. Even the waiters froze. From a shadowed booth near the window, a tall man stood. His black suit fit him perfectly, and his eyes gleamed like steel. He moved with calm power, every step measured like a lion in a room of house cats. Everyone recognized him. Or rather, they recognized the fear that came with his name. Adrian Kale, known as the Titan Boss. Leader of the most powerful syndicate in the outer colonies. A man whose words could end a war. Or start one. He stopped beside their table, silent for a moment, looking down at Ronan. Then his voice came, deep and calm. "Are you mocking her?" Ronan blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" Adrian's cold eyes turned toward Lena. "I heard every word," he said. "You humiliated a woman in public. For what? To feel taller?" Ronan laughed nervously. "This is none of your concern. It's a private matter." Adrian didn't move. "You're right," he said quietly. "It's not my concern. It's my interest." He reached into his coat and placed a platinum card on the table. The symbol on it, a silver serpent wrapped around Saturn, made the color drain from Ronan's face. Everyone in the restaurant knew that symbol. It was the mark of the Titan Syndicate. "She's mine now," Adrian said. "You just lost something far more valuable than you ever understood." The words rolled through the room like thunder. The guests stared, not daring to breathe. Ronan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked around for help, but even the security drones hovered back, waiting for permission to move. No one would interfere with Adrian Kell. Lena's heart pounded. "Wait, what do you mean?" she whispered. Adrian turned his gaze to her, softer now. "I don't take what isn't worth protecting," he said. "And you have been worth more than any of them see." He glanced at Ronan. "You mocked her hands, but those hands build what others can't. You laughed at her dreams, but those dreams could power stars." Ronan pushed back his chair. "You can't just—" Adrian's eyes met his. The air around them seemed to freeze. "Sit," he said. It wasn't loud, but it carried a command that made Ronan collapse back into his seat without realizing it. Then Adrian looked at Lena again. "Finish your meal," he said calmly. "You won't ever bow your head again." He turned and walked away, the crowd parting silently as he left. The platinum card still lay on the table, gleaming under the lights. No one spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Lena stood. Her hands trembled, and she didn't know whether to be angry, afraid, or grateful. She looked at Ronan. His face was pale and shaking. "What did you do?" she whispered. "Why did you humiliate me?" Ronan's voice cracked. "Lena, you don't understand. That man, he's dangerous. You can't—" "I know what he is," she said softly. "But tonight he showed more respect than you ever did." Without another word, she picked up her small purse and walked out. The other guests turned away, pretending not to stare. Her steps echoed down the hall as she left the glowing restaurant and entered the quiet docking bay. Through the glass wall, the stars stretched endlessly. She stood there for a long time, trying to breathe. Then a faint hum filled the air. A black transport ship glided silently toward her platform. It bore no guild markings, but only that same silver serpent on its hull. The door opened and a voice came from within. "Miss Hale," said a calm man in a pilot's uniform. "Mr. Cale requests your presence." She hesitated. "I don't know him." "Why would he want me?" The pilot smiled faintly. "Because you fixed something that no one else could. And he never forgets people like that." Her mind raced. It could be a trap. It could be worse than anything Ronan had done. But something deep inside whispered, "Go." She looked back at the restaurant, glowing behind her like a cage of gold. Then she looked at the ship, dark and quiet, waiting in the shadows. Taking a deep breath, Lena stepped forward. The doors closed behind her, sealing her fate. Through the window, the stars began to blur as the ship moved away from Elysium Station. Her reflection looked back at her. A simple mechanic in a borrowed gown, leaving behind the man who mocked her and stepping toward the unknown. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt awake. As the ship vanished into the deep black of space, she whispered to herself, "Maybe this time I'll finally find where I belong." When Lena woke up, the room around her was quiet and glowing softly blue. The ceiling wasn't glass, but curved metal covered in faint constellations. A low hum ran through the air, steady, alive. It was the sound of an engine, but not like any ship she had ever worked on. She sat up slowly. A small screen on the wall lit up and displayed her name. "Welcome, Lena Hale." The door opened with a hiss, and a man in a dark uniform stepped in. His voice was calm and respectful. "Good morning, Miss Hale. You're safe aboard the Helios Few, Mr. Cale's command ship. He'll see you shortly." Lena frowned. "Command ship of what?" "I'm not part of any organization." The man smiled faintly. "You will understand soon." He led her through metallic corridors where men and women worked quietly, their clothes simple but their faces serious. No one looked at her with mockery or pity. They nodded respectfully as if she already belonged there. Through a wide viewing window, Lena saw Saturn's golden rings spread like fire across the darkness. The ship was moving near the planet's orbit, surrounded by smaller vessels that followed its lead. She counted at least 20. "Are those guild ships?" she asked. The man shook his head. "No, Miss Hale, they're ours. The Titan Syndicate may have been born from the underworld, but it's no longer what people think. You'll see." He stopped in front of a large door and stepped aside. "Mr. Cale is waiting inside." Adrian Cale stood by the panoramic window, hands clasped behind his back. The starlight reflected off his coat. He didn't turn immediately, just said, "I didn't expect you to accept my invitation so quickly." Lena took a step closer, nervous but firm. "I didn't have much choice. Your pilot said you requested me." He finally turned to face her. "I did," he said simply. "Because people like you are rare, Miss Hale." "I don't understand," she said. "You're a Mafia boss. Why would you care about me or my work?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Is that what they tell you? That I'm only a criminal?" He gestured toward the window. "Look out there. See those ships? Most of them are patched together from old Earth designs. Broken, forgotten, abandoned by the same corporations that mocked you. I took them, rebuilt them, and gave them back to people who had nothing. That's what the Syndicate is now. A shield for those who were left behind." Lena stared at him, unsure if she could believe it. "And you think I can help you?" I don't think, Adrian said. I know. He pressed a button on the table, and a holographic projection appeared, a bright glowing model of her own fusion stability core. Her breath caught. It was her design, the same one the guild had laughed at and thrown away. You stole my work? She whispered. Adrian shook his head. I found it in the guild's archives. They tried to bury it after calling it a failure. But I saw the data. You weren't wrong, Lena. You were too far ahead for them. He walked around the table, his voice low but full of conviction. Every ship in my fleet runs on failing energy cells. We can't expand, can't protect our colonies, can't survive long wars. But your core could change that. It could give power back to the people who were never supposed to have it. She hesitated, looking at the hologram. It's still incomplete. I never solved the overheating cycle. Adrian smiled slightly. You will. You're here to finish what you started. And when you do, this fleet will belong to you as much as it does to me. For days, Lena worked in the ship's engine lab, a place full of tools, holographic screens, and quiet engineers who treated her like their leader. She rebuilt her core piece by piece, fixing old errors, redesigning circuits, and recoding energy regulators. Every night, Adrian visited the lab, not to command her, but to listen. Sometimes he stood silently for hours, watching her hands move with precision. At first, she distrusted him, but she soon realized that his people were not cruel, not greedy. They were engineers, refugees, outcasts, soldiers, but all from colonies forgotten by the guild. The so-called Mafia was really a network of survivors, and Adrian was not the monster the stories described. He was calm, patient, and surprisingly thoughtful. One night, while she calibrated the energy filters, she asked quietly, "Why did you help me at that dinner?" "You didn't even know me," he replied without hesitation. "Because I know what it feels like to be humiliated by people who think power makes them better. They laughed at me too, before I built something they couldn't control." His tone carried weight. She understood then that he hadn't saved her out of pity, but recognition. Weeks passed. The prototype finally neared completion. The last test involved full activation, a risk no guild scientist dared take. If it failed, the energy backlash could destroy the entire ship. Lena stood before the control panel, hands trembling slightly. Adrian was beside her. His calm voice steadied her. "You don't have to do this today." "I do," she said. "I've run all the simulations." "It will work." She placed her hand on the activation switch. The lab lights dimmed. The prototype began to glow, faint at first, then bright, then blinding. The power surged through the chamber like lightning, shaking the deck. Alarms flickered red for a second, then turned green. The core stabilized. A soft hum filled the air. Smooth, balanced, perfect. The engineers erupted in cheers. Energy readings climbed higher than any reactor in human history. The Helios 5 shook once more, then steadied as its systems synchronized with the new power source. Adrian looked at her, pride glinting in his usually cold eyes. "You did it," he said softly. "You changed everything." Lena smiled, tears filling her eyes. "No, we did. Together." Hours later, as the fleet tested the new system, news began to spread across the network. The Titan Syndicate's ships were no longer dark or dying. They were shining. Their new reactors were stable, limitless, unstoppable. The guild panicked. Their monopoly on starship fuel collapsed overnight. The same executives who once mocked Lena now scrambled to trace her designs. Ronan Vale's face appeared on every report, his company in crisis as investors fled. He tried to contact her, but his messages went unanswered. Instead, a hollow broadcast appeared across the colonies. It showed Lena standing beside Adrian aboard the Helios 5. Behind them, the fleet burned like a constellation reborn. Lena spoke with calm strength. "Power belongs to those who build it with their own hands. The days of control through fear and greed are over. Humanity deserves better. This is the beginning of a new age, one built by those who were never meant to lead yet will lead anyway." Billions watched in silence. For the first time, her name echoed through every communication channel. Not as a mechanic, not as a nobody, but as the architect of a new future. Later, in the quiet observation room, Adrian poured 2 glasses of water. Nothing fancy, just clean and simple. He handed one to her. "You know," he said, "the guild will call us criminals again. They'll come for us." Lena smiled faintly. Then they'll see what real power looks like. He chuckled softly. And if they ask who gave it to us? She looked out at the stars. Tell them it came from the woman they laughed at. For a long moment, neither spoke. The stars drifted slowly outside the window. The fleet engines glowed softly with the light of her invention. Finally, Adrian said quietly, "You were never mine, Lena. But I'm proud to stand beside you." She turned to him, her voice calm and certain. "And I'm proud I didn't let them break me." The Helios Fifth turned toward deep space, leading the reborn fleet of humanity's forgotten. In the darkness between worlds, its engines shone with the light of one woman's defiance, a reminder that respect cannot be bought, stolen, or faked. It must be earned. And Lena Hale had just earned it, for all of humanity.